Dear fellow human beings, or shall I say, dear friends, dear colleagues, dear brothers and sisters, today's video is very special to me, and I hope it will make some sense to you. The clarity that I speak from, I did not have when I was intoxicated by the experience of youth. And that clarity that I'm going to share with you is part of the wisdom traditions, but it doesn't matter how much you read about the wisdom traditions. That clarity can only come when we stop forcing or trying to force clarity. It comes with also growing old. So, as I mentioned many times recently, I'm now in the final chapter of my life, the final season. Of course, if one is fully awake, then every season is the best season of your life. But the reason this is the final season is that's the exit of this form and then an onward journey, which I'm also going to explore with you, the 7 spiritual laws of rebirth. But now I just want to share what I meant to share before I gave you this introduction and brief preface, if you will. When I look honestly at my own experience throughout life, grief, anxiety, loneliness, physical pain, the ache of uncertainty, I see that none of it is unique to me. None of it is unique to me. The details of my story may be particular, but the underlying vulnerability is universal, part of what it means to have a nervous system, a history, and a human body that will age and die. Seeing this has become a quiet spiritual practice in itself. When I sit with my own discomfort and resist the urge to make it a personal failure, I start to recognize it as a thread in a much larger human tapestry. Contemporary compassion research calls this sense of common humanity and frames it as essential. The shift from why me to this too is human. When I remember that, I feel less like an isolated, separate self and more like an expression of a shared field of life. For a long time, my suffering collapsed inward. I used it as evidence that I was not spiritual enough, not disciplined enough, not surrendered enough. I compared myself to images of enlightened people who seemed to be beyond anger, fear, or doubt, and I weaponized those ideals against myself. In those moments, even my practice was subtly self-centered. Meditation became a way to fix me. Yoga became a way to perfect my body and my mind and service. Even when it looked loving, it was entangled with the search for validation. Teachings from Karma Yoga emphasize how suffering arises not from action itself, but from attachment to outcomes, recognition, reward, approval, success. I could feel the hook in me. I wanted my practice to pay off in a particular way on my schedule. The turning point did not come as a single revelation, but as many small, humbling recognitions. Again and again, life placed me in front of other people's pain. with students, family, strangers on the subway, messages that arrived at odd hours from someone on the edge. Each time I noticed that when I stepped out of my own spiral for even a moment and asked, how can I be of use right now? Something in me softened. Karma Yoga gives me a language for this. It is the path of action offered without clinging to results. The willingness to serve for the sake of serving, not for what it gives back to me. When I show up in that way, answering the email with presence, holding space for a student's tears, making a video or writing an essay as an offering rather than as a performance, I can feel my own suffering begin to reorganize. It doesn't vanish, but it is no longer the center of gravity. On the inside, practicing Karma Yoga feels like a subtle but radical reduction of attention. Instead of rehearsing my story yet again, I let awareness widen to include the person in front of me, the community around me, the world as it is today. I notice the impulse to demand a certain outcome. Let this talk land perfectly. Let this project succeed. Let this person appreciate what I've done. And I experiment with releasing it just for this one action. Teachers of Karma Yoga say that the essence is to renounce the results of work and offer them back to the whole, the mystery. In practice, that means I do my best as wholeheartedly as I can, and then I consciously let it go. The video I'm sharing with you may go viral or vanish into obscurity. The course that I'm offering on my app may fill or flop, or anything else that I do. Someone may thank me with tears in their eyes or never acknowledge the effort. When I remember to offer everything, success and failure alike, back to the larger field, the great mystery of existence, the divine self, I seem to suffer less. The grip of my story loosens, and a quieter joy moves in. There is a paradox here that I experience over and over. When I genuinely aim to alleviate someone else's suffering, it so often eases my own. I know that modern research on compassion notes that compassion, the active desire to help, is different from empathic overload, and that it tends to nourish both giver and receiver. When I drown in the world's pain without any sense of agency, I burn out. When I let love move through me in specific grounded actions, I feel more alive, not less. Service demands dimensions of my own heart I cannot access by thinking about myself. When I'm holding space for someone else, I discover patience I didn't know I had, strength I didn't think I possessed, a tenderness that does not feel like it belongs to a small me at all. I know that teachings on Karma Yoga describe it as a revelation of our human potential and our unique and diverse roles, a way to show up and reimagine a new world together. In those moments, suffering becomes less of a private prison and more of a doorway into shared humanity. Even though I often name this as Karma Yoga, I experience it as inseparable from other parts of yoga. The discernment of Jnana Yoga helps me see that the I, who claims ownership of action, is in truth a pattern arising in awareness, important but not ultimate. The devotion of Bhakti Yoga turns my service into an act of love toward the divine, however I happen to be naming it that day. God, the self, reality, life. Meditation and meditative practice steadies the whole thing. Without some degree of inner stillness, it is easy for service to become frantic, for helping to become another way to avoid feeling. Practices drawn from Raj Yoga and mindfulness let me notice suffering in myself and others before it solidifies into reactivity. Then I can respond rather than reflexively defend. In this way, love in action becomes less about heroic gestures and more about thousands of small conscious choices every day. As I deepen in this path, I cannot help feel how deeply personal suffering is interwoven with collective conditions. My individual anxieties sit inside larger systems, economic, cultural, ecological, that generate and distribute pain unevenly. Karma Yoga, as I understand it now, asks me not only to comfort individuals, but also to contribute in whatever ways I can to transforming those systems. That might mean using my platforms to amplify marginalized voices, orienting my work toward community uplift, or supporting initiatives that seek structural change. Writings on karma, yoga, and community emphasize that our world needs all of us to show up and participate in building more compassionate forms of living together. For me, this is where the path of love in action becomes a bridge between inner practice and outer change. My practice on the yoga mat, on the cushion, and in my heart becomes inseparable from how I relate to justice, equity, and the planet itself. Underneath all of this, I keep returning to one simple recognition. I belong to a human family in which no one is exempt from loss, fear, or heartbreak. When I let this in fully, it often softens my defenses. The stranger on the street, the person whose politics I disagree with, and I do disagree with a lot of it, the student whose pain I do not fully understand. All of them are walking around with their own invisible bundle of sorrows and hopes. My practice at its most honest now is to remember this and to let my actions be shaped by it, to use my hands, my words, my work, my platforms as instruments of love as best I can. The days I manage this, even a little, my own suffering feels held within a larger field of meaning. It does not disperse, but it stops defining me. Love in action becomes both my way of easing that pain and my way of honoring the shared vulnerability that binds me to every being I meet. If this moves you, then do share these ideas with others. And in any case, I wish you peace, ease of suffering, joy, and freedom. Om Bhavantu Sukhina. Om Bhavantu Sukhina. Om Bhavantu Sukhina.